From helping a starving child in Africa to sending young men off into a bloody war, there's always two sides to foreign engagement, good and bad. Ever since World War II, the United States has had one grand strategy for foreign affairs, which is deep engagement. Presidents have followed this suit ever since World War II. But the question is, are we doing too much, too little, or just enough? American citizens are highly divided on how often the U.S. should be pursuing foreign affairs. Three issues seem to arise when talking about foreign affairs, and those are financial problems, laws that allow involvement, and effects of engagement. What about the money is a common question that works its way to the top of the list. According to Raul Amors from Mondwise, he says that the U.S. is currently spending $35 billion a year to 140 countries on foreign affairs. 24% of the $35 billion goes to health programs, 17% goes to military, 13% goes to economic development, and 7% goes to development. Opposers argue that U.S. currently has its own debt of $18.2 trillion, so why would we focus on other countries before focusing on ourselves? Also, 18% of tax dollars goes to aid. When taking a poll, Americans said that they would rather have their tax dollars be used domestically rather than foreign. It is evident that a lot of money goes to foreign aid, but a lot of Americans are surprised to find out what percent of the annual budget goes. And 1% of the budget goes to foreign spending, and the annual budget for U.S. is $3.8 trillion. So even though it sounds like a lot in dollars, it's actually very minute compared to what we spend everywhere else. By spending the 1%, we can strengthen the relationship with other countries. This leads me into what U.S. policy is and where it came from. The Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan are considered to be two peas in the pod when talking about foreign policy. This came after World War II, when Britain could no longer be the power nation of the world because they couldn't afford it. And a lot of good came out of this. It portrayed America as the good guys, and diplomatic relationships were nurtured because you're helping them and they're helping you. And in times of war, that's a good thing to have because you have allies and you have places where you can set up military bases. However, others believe we're abusing the doctrine. Carol Dorothy of PEW Research Center says, "They're not turning away, but there is certainly no desire on the public's part to get involved in hotspots around the world." And it's also argued that the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan are what sent us into the bloody war of Vietnam, where men were drafted without a choice. And some veterans are still affected to this day because of that. This transitions me into how U.S. aid affects the U.S. as well as other countries. American foreign aid can help other countries medically, economically, and as well as a military stance. HIV and AIDS is a very big thing to consider because with our aid, that helps stop their diseases and other types. That not only helps them for obvious reasons, but also it helps us because those diseases can be transmitted back into America. Over 1 million people live in poverty in foreign nations, and with U.S.'s AIDS help, it can enhance their standard of living, their education, and their protection. With positive effects, though, there's always negative to come with it. And according to Green Garage article, aid can be used to control hosting nations. So it can be abused in the sense that if they're going over there and helping them, the nation feels like they have to give them whatever they want, such as a military base. And terrorism is also a very big threat to consider. When you're pushing into other people's lands, there's always going to be radicals that are not going to like it. So it's thought that this can sometimes breed terrorism. It all comes down to three issues. Spending, do we use the 1% to help relations, or do we focus on our own debt? Laws, are they being abused, or is our tactic working? And three, effects, do the good outweigh the bad, or the other way around? Foreign aid is such a large part of the government today and everything that we do. So when trying to figure out whether to push forward or pull back, all sides need to be considered.
The doctrine and the Marshall Plan you talked about, are those laws that our country has to abide by, or are they just more of guidelines?
They're not necessarily laws. It was just there were policies brought up that were saying like the U.S. is going like we're going to do this, we're going to take this approach, and there's not really laws that say that, but it's just more guidelines.
I have a question. Can I have a question for you and you? Really, that's like personal opinion still. Okay. Why do you think the U.S. gets involved in these foreign wars?
I think the U.S. is so used to being a power nation because after World War II, everybody was hurting, and we were hurting not as bad as everybody else. So once we got that status, we think that we need to push everywhere else. And a big thing about the Truman Doctrine is giving democracy to countries that want it. And I feel like because we think I'm not going to say that we have a bad government. It's just we think our democracy is the best, so we're going to try to give that to other people necessarily when they don't want it.
Okay,